It was 2 days before Christmas. A man called 911 from his home in Ellington, Connecticut. He was hysterical. He said a masked intruder had broken into his house, 6'2", stocky build, wearing full camouflage, and had shot his wife dead. He said he'd fought the attacker off with a blowtorch. He said he was the victim. And for a moment, just a moment, police almost believed him. Then they looked at his wife's Fitbit. She had been moving around the house for a full hour after he said she was dead. The wristband she wore to track her morning steps became the one witness he could never silence. This is the story of Richard Dabate and how a tiny piece of technology on his wife's wrist sent him to prison for 65 years. Richard and Connie Dabate had been married for over a decade. They lived in a quiet home in Ellington, a small town in Connecticut where nothing much ever happened. They had 2 young sons, both in school. By all outward appearances, they were a normal suburban family. But behind closed doors, their marriage had been unraveling for at least a year. What investigators would later discover, buried in Connie's iPhone, was a note she had written in December 2014, a full year before her death. She titled it, "Why I Want a Divorce." She knew something was wrong. She just didn't know how wrong things were about to get. Because Richard had a secret. He had been having an affair, a long-term relationship with another woman. And by late 2015, that woman was pregnant with his child. Richard was caught between 2 lives, and he decided to solve the problem the worst way imaginable. It was December 23rd, 2015, a Wednesday morning, 2 days before Christmas. Richard told police the morning started normally. He put his 2 sons on the school bus, waved goodbye to Connie, and left for work. Connie, he said, was heading to a fitness class at the local YMCA. She was wearing her Fitbit, clipped to her waistband as she always did, ready to track her workout. Here is where Richard's story starts. He said he realized, partway to work, that he'd forgotten his laptop, so he turned around and drove home. He said he arrived somewhere between 8:45 and 9 in the morning. He heard a noise upstairs. He went to investigate, and that's when he says he saw him, the intruder. 6'2", stocky, full camouflage suit, a mask. He said Connie came home right at that moment, walked in through the garage, and the masked man shot her. Richard says he then fought the intruder, grabbed a blowtorch from his workshop, and burned the attacker until he fled. He hit the panic button. He called 911 at 10:11 in the morning. It was, on paper, a terrifying home invasion, except not a single piece of evidence supported it. Police arrived at the scene and immediately noticed something was off. First, there was no sign of forced entry. Every door, every window, untouched. A 6'2" intruder in full camouflage had apparently walked into a locked house and left no trace. Second, nothing was stolen. No valuables taken, no electronics missing. The kind of intruder who shoots a woman in her own home and then just leaves empty-handed? Third, and this is where it gets interesting, investigators looked at Richard himself. He had injuries. He said the intruder had attacked him, but the injuries were consistent with being self-inflicted. Zip ties used loosely, a shallow cut from a box cutter. It looked staged. But here's what broke the case open. Investigators obtained search warrants for everything digital in that house. Both cell phones, the home computers, the house alarm system logs, Richard's email records, and Connie's Fitbit. What they found when they synchronized all of that data was a timeline so precise, so damning, that Richard's entire story collapsed in a single afternoon. Let's go through it piece by piece. The email. Richard told police he sent an email to his supervisor from his car, pulled over nearly 2 miles from the house at 9:04 in the morning. The email said an alarm had gone off at his home and he needed to go check on it. Sounds reasonable, except investigators pulled the IP address that sent that email. It was the home's own Wi-Fi network. A standard home router reaches at most 300 feet outdoors under ideal conditions. Richard's car, parked 2 miles away, not even close. He sent that email from inside the house, which means he was home and lying about where he was at 9:04 in the morning. The alarm system. The house alarm logs showed exactly when the garage door opened that morning, 9:23 a.m. Not earlier. Not at the time Richard claimed Connie walked in on the intruder, 9:23 a.m. Connie's Fitbit. This is the part that no amount of lawyering could explain away. Connie's Fitbit 1, a small clip-on tracker worn on her waistband, had been recording her movement all morning. According to Richard's original story, Connie was shot shortly after arriving home, almost immediately after walking in from the garage. But the Fitbit told a completely different story. Starting at 9:23 a.m., when the garage door opened, the Fitbit recorded Connie moving. Not a few steps, not a short walk. Over the next hour and 2 minutes, Connie's Fitbit recorded her walking a total of 1,217 feet. 1,217 feet. She was alive, moving around the house, for over an hour after Richard said she was already dead. The Fitbit data showed all movement stopped at 10:05 a.m. Richard called 911 at 10:11 a.m. The device on his wife's wrist had quietly, faithfully recorded every step she took, right up until she couldn't take any more. The phone data. And if that wasn't enough, Richard's own Microsoft account record showed him logging into his email from the home IP address multiple times that morning. He was home. He had always been home. Every lie he told had a digital timestamp attached to it. Richard Dabate was arrested and charged with murder, tampering with evidence, and making false statements to police. The road to trial was long. COVID delayed jury selection. His original attorney died. It took years. But on April 5, 2022, the trial finally began in Rockville Superior Court. It lasted 22 days. It involved 600 exhibits and 130 witnesses. Richard testified in his own defense. He maintained his innocence throughout. He described the masked attacker as a large man, with a voice, he said, like actor Vin Diesel. The prosecution methodically dismantled every piece of his story. The email IP address, the alarm logs, the Fitbit data, the self-inflicted injuries, the affair, the pregnancy. On May 10, 2022, the jury delivered its verdict. Guilty. Guilty of murder. Guilty of tampering with evidence. Guilty of making false statements. Richard Dabate was sentenced to 65 years in prison. He filed an appeal, arguing in part that the Fitbit data should not have been admitted as evidence. In March 2025, the Connecticut Supreme Court upheld his conviction in a unanimous 6-0 decision. He will die in prison. Here's what I keep thinking about with this case. Richard Dabate spent years planning what he believed was the perfect crime. He staged a scene. He injured himself. He invented an attacker with a detailed description. He thought he had covered every angle. What he didn't account for, what almost no one who commits a crime in 2015 accounts for, is that we are all constantly leaving a digital trail behind us. Every step Connie took that morning was logged. Every time Richard connected to the internet, his location was recorded. Every door that opened had a timestamp. He didn't just fail to cover his tracks, he actively created evidence against himself, with the very devices he used every single day. Your phone knows where you are. Your email knows where it was sent from. Your wife's fitness tracker knows she was alive. Richard Dabate thought he was the only witness to what happened in that house. He wasn't. Richard Dabate is now 48 years old. He won't be eligible for release until he is well into his 90s, if ever. Connie Dabate was 39 years old when she died, 2 days before Christmas, with a Fitbit on her waistband and a fitness class she never made it to. She couldn't speak for herself in that courtroom, but her data did. If you found this case as fascinating as I did, drop a comment below. What do you think is the most surprising piece of digital evidence from this case? And if you know a case where technology caught someone who thought they got away with it, I want to hear it. That might be our next episode. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Justice was served.